Welcome to Football Game Plan's FCS Kickoff presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Mike McCarthy is the producer behind the boards as we bring you our preview of the 2018 Ivy League. We'll kick off this Ivy League season preview by taking a look at some of the key storylines as we head into our 4-minute offense. Both the Brown Bears and Cornell Big Red will be looking to end long droughts in regards to the Ivy title. The last time Brown won the title was back in 2008, while the Big Red's drought extends all the way back to 1990. Both Phil Estes of Brown and David Archer of Cornell are outstanding coaches and head into the season with a lot of optimism and feel as though that this year could be different in the Ancient Eight. The Bulldogs are breaking in a new offensive coordinator in Kevin Cahill, as the former OC Joe Conlon is now the head coach at Fordham. Now, Cahill is no stranger to the Yale offense, as he's been both the receivers coach and more recently the QB coach and passing game coordinator for the Bulldogs. There's always a bit of transition when you're now the play caller, but there shouldn't be a significant drop-off as Coach Cahill has a lot of talent to work with. Plus, there's always a positive in the unknown. The Harvard Crimson offensive line gets a big boost with the return of stud guard Larry Allen Jr. The 6'4", 285-pound Allen missed all of last season for personal reasons, but now returns to reclaim his place amongst the best in the Ivy League. Now, new offensive line coach Andy Marino, who comes over from Lehigh, gets an opportunity to continue to grow the game of one of the more versatile and athletic linemen in the Ivy. And speaking of Harvard, their annual season-ending matchup against Yale, simply known as The Game, will have an even more of a historic feel to it, as this year's game will be played at the iconic Fenway Park. It's the 135th edition of The Game, and it'll be a great way to end the season around the Ivy, as they've gone to sort of a rivalry scheduling format where you're going to see that final week of the season filled with rivalry games like Columbia Cornell, Brown Dartmouth, and Penn Princeton. As we get ready to kick off the start of summer workouts and fall camp, we will give you a look around the conference at some of the conference's best, and we'll start by unveiling our all-conference team, beginning with the offensive side of the ball. Our preseason all-Ivy offense obviously has a lot of talent on it. Quarterback Kurt Rawlings of Yale headlines this list after throwing for over 2,300 yards, 19 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions. Another QB in John Lovett makes our team as the all-purpose player. He missed all of last season, but in 2016, he scored 20 rushing touchdowns while throwing an additional 10 to only 2 interceptions. The Columbia Lions have one of the more dynamic talents in the league in junior wide receiver Josh Wainwright. Last year, Wainwright led the Lions in receiving with 78 receptions, over 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Yale's Zane Dudick was the Ivy Freshman of the Year after going over 1,100 yards rushing and scoring 15 rushing touchdowns, averaging an impressive 7.1 yards a carry. So needless to say that as a sophomore, he'll have a huge target on his back this upcoming season. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, and I think this is where the league has grown significantly over the last 4 to 5 seasons. Penn's Sam Filippi is not only a great football player, but a great person as well. His teammate Nick Miller is one of the best linebackers in the FCS. And speaking of linebackers, Jack Trainer of Dartmouth seems to always be involved in something. He's able to play the pass equally as effective as he does a run, and you rarely see him make a mistake out there on the field. And wrapping up our preseason all-Ivy team with the specialists, and it seems as though Harvard's Justice Shelton Mosley has been with the Crimson for over a decade. That's probably because he's been making plays since he arrived on campus as a freshman. He's a terrific receiver, but an even more dynamic returnman, having scored 2 touchdowns on punt returns last year, averaging a whopping 18.8 yards a return. Now let's take you around the Ivy League as we go team by team and preview the upcoming season. For the Yale Bulldogs, balance is everything in football, and when you look at the Bulldogs, they have that in spades. And when I'm talking about balance, I'm talking about both sides of the ball being equally as good. Their offense is both young and experienced, and despite losing 2 excellent players in Matthew Oplinger and Foye Oluwakin, their defense with defensive lineman Kyle Mullen should be in great hands and still should be one of the stingiest in the league. If their offense can continue to take the next step, this team could be dangerous. I think the Princeton Tigers could have one of the best offenses, not only just in the Ivy League, but in the FCS. The Tigers get back everything quarterback John Lovett and his unique set of skills, along with running back Charlie Volker, wide receiver Stephen Carlson, Jesper Horsted, and tight end Tiger Besh. That's a lot of ways to defeat an opponent. The focus then shifts to the defense side of the ball, and this is where you have a bit of concern about the Tigers. Although they do get back talented rusher Kurt Haluba, and if the rushing offense can get back to what it was in 2016 with Lovett, that could be what the defense and the offense for that matter needs to help them close out those close games this upcoming season. The Columbia Lions will go from the hunter to the hunted this year, but I'm willing to bet that won't change their daily approach to being consistent. That's what we saw from them last season each and every week. The Lions were solid in all three facets: offense, defense, and special teams. Offensively, finding a new quarterback is the focus, and the defensive line will be reshuffled a bit, but overall, a lot of key pieces return. We'll learn a lot about Columbia in their opening contest against Central Connecticut State, who made the FCS playoffs last season. Keep an eye on the Dartmouth Big Green this season. I know a lot of the focus will be on the quarterback position, but whoever steps into that role will have the benefit of talent around them. I think the Big Green have playmakers on the perimeter and underrated talent up front. For me, Jared Garbino gives them something at QB that not a lot of teams outside of Princeton boast at the position. The question would be if he can continue to grow as a passer. Defensively, they still look strong this season, as they were very tough to score against last year. The Big Green, in my opinion, are one of the more well-coached teams in the Ivy League. The Harvard Crimson have enough talent to compete for a title this year. What we do know about them is that they'll be strong along both sides of the line of scrimmage. I think the biggest question mark for Harvard will be at quarterback. Can they find the level of consistency that they've enjoyed from that position over the last decade? Jake Smith was a freshman last year, and naturally you expect to see him be vastly improved as a sophomore, especially considering he has talent in the backfield and will have good protection up front. The Penn Quakers have one of my favorite backs in the league in Carrican Brooks. I was at that Lehigh game last year where he ran for nearly 300 yards that day. So needless to say, the Quakers will be able to run the ball this season. The questions are everywhere else, more in particular at quarterback and at wide receiver. Defensively, I have some concerns about the defensive line, but not about their second level. They actually may have the best group of backers in the Ivy League. Can that defensive line gel quickly and be much better than what we saw from them last season is where the preseason focus will be for head coach Ray Priori. The Cornell Big Red could potentially be the surprise story of the Ivy League. There's something to be said about experience, and this year's team has that across the board. On offense, turnovers plagued the Big Red as they came in bunches. However, turnovers aside, there's talent at quarterback, running back, and also along the offensive line. The receivers are young but talented. On defense, they were solid last year and should be that way once again. Down the stretch, they held Dartmouth to 10 points, Columbia to 18, and gave Penn all they could handle. So any improvement on offense, and Coach Archer could have his first winning season as the Big Red head coach. The Brown Bears went winless in the Ivy for the first time since 1992, and I think that could be chalked up to youthful inexperience. Now, the hope is that experience gained last season will translate into W's. The offense is mainly the biggest area for improvement for the Bears, especially at quarterback. Defensively, they weren't as bad as the numbers indicated, and with an improved offense that's able to sustain drives, as last year they only converted on 31% of those third downs, the defense will be markedly better. So look for the Bears to be much improved in 2018. So that's a wrap from Football Game Plan's FCS Kickoff. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts, and don't forget to check out and subscribe to the FCS Opening Drive podcast on iTunes and also on SoundCloud, where Dave Hashagen and myself dive deeper into the world of the FCS. And don't forget to subscribe to the Football Game Plan Network on YouTube, where you can find all of our FCS video content at youtube.com/footballgameplan.